Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some IDP Week 6 waiver wire ads.
Hike!
All right, Joe, per usual, we're going to go through 5 of the top players on our mind and how much FAAB we're willing to spend on these players, particularly in IDP. So let's talk about the first guy here. Defensive end edge rusher Derick Hall, the former second-round pick out of Auburn. Didn't do much in his rookie year, but in his sophomore season, he's doing quite well. Against the New York Giants, he had 1 forced fumble, a sack, 4 solo tackles, 2 tackle assists, 2 QB hits, and a tackle for loss. All in all, Joey's had 5 sacks so far to start the beginning of the year. He's rostered in 44% of leagues. So what are your thoughts here on Hall?
Yeah, like you mentioned, 5 sacks on the year. He's had a sack in every game but one, and that was against the New England Patriots. He's been impressive. Just wonder, Mike McDonald coming over. He's obviously gotten something right with him and got him going in the right direction, like you said. In his second year, it's faster than a lot of defensive linemen can kind of, be making this type of an impact.
I honestly think that's a pretty good point by you because, remember, Mike McDonald, he brought his own defensive scheme. Pete Carroll's no longer there. Obviously, John Schneider drafted Derick Hall and thought he could be a good player. But when you have a new coach come in, you don't know how it's all going to shake out. So Hall has really stepped up under McDonald's leadership. So that bodes well for him. And honestly, he's the premier pass rusher at this point. I mean, he played 64% of the snaps. Uchenna Nwosu, who's probably the biggest name other than Boye Mafe on the team, he's hampered with injuries. He came back and he couldn't even play the full game. Boye Mafe was hurt. Boye Mafe has looked pretty impressive too. So I think overall, Derick Hall, he definitely is worth rostering. I'd say about. It's tough because I think, we were talking about, he did get injured and he left the game. So if I knew he was healthy, I may say up to 10% for the guy. Maybe I would just say 5. Hopefully you have a roster spot. It's going to be tough, though, because it really depends on your IDP league. If you're talking about a shallow league, you're probably going to, you'd have a hard time playing this guy. But if it's a deeper league, he's definitely worth starting, especially like in our league that we run. He's definitely worth starting.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if he's going to keep continuing to get the sacks. And we've got the big play scoring where that matters a lot, and that's allowed him to score really well over these last few weeks, and especially those couple of forced fumbles that he has on the season as well. But yeah, if you're looking for a spot start with a bye week injury or anything, just keep monitoring the injury report because left the game with a foot injury, couldn't return to the game. Did not practice on Monday, but it's just kind of a walkthrough thing on Monday anyways. So we'll see as he progresses, but they got a short turnaround Thursday night against the 49ers.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So the next player we're going to be talking about, another sophomore. That's defensive tackle Gervon Dexter of the Chicago Bears, former second-round pick of the Florida Gators. Has looked quite impressive. He also is getting a lot of sacks here, Joe. He's had 4 sacks in the first 5 games. For defensive tackle, that's pretty good, and it's a sack in 4 of 5. Against the Carolina Panthers, he had a fumble recovery, a sack, 2 assisted tackles, and 4 QB hits. That's a good sign because that means he's getting pressure. He's rostered in 25% of leagues. So what would you spend on to get this guy?
Yeah, I definitely think Gervon Dexter is interesting. Sack production out of the defensive tackle position, is huge. They got the Jacksonville Jaguars coming up here this next week, but I think I think we're probably about 5% would probably be fair for Gervon Dexter. Maybe more if defensive tackle is a priority in your leagues, and if you start multiple spots like we do in our leagues. But for the most part, I think 5% would probably get it done for you.
So this might shock you a little bit, but I honestly would go 10% for the guy.
Okay.
Did you know that he right now, when you look at defensive tackles, he is second only to Zach Allen in leading the league in QB hits with 10 QB hits. So QB, right, because we think, sacks, everyone wants to look at sacks, but sacks can be kind of a, fluky number.
Yeah.
But if you're getting QB hits, that means you're getting pressures. So This guy, I think, is doing quite well, and he's sustaining the success. He's having multiple sacks in multiple games, right? This guy, we think about Justin Matabuke last year. He came out of nowhere. Guy was primarily a run stuffer. And then all of a sudden, he just came on the scene and did really well. So we're seeing a pattern here. I think it's worth rostering. And not to mention, I mean, he was on 53% of the snaps. He's really the pass rushing defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears. And the other defensive tackle, that guy, Andrew Billings, he's more of a mauler in the inside. So
Right.
I think Gervon Dexter is a guy who's definitely – if you're in a defensive tackle required league, and in our league we start 2, he's a must start going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, he's definitely earned it. And just interesting, I know we talked before, and once again, a second-year player, we know defensive tackles usually can take a little bit longer than other positions, but impressive he's doing it in his second year. I mean, it is a very talented Bears defense, not just in their defensive line, but secondary, causes QBs to hold onto the ball longer. And I think he's got more opportunities coming for the Jags next week. And, Lawrence likes to hold onto that ball ordinarily.
That's a good point. Yeah, honestly, the whole unit is playing really, really well. So let's talk about another defensive tackle. Joe, this was your request to add this guy. And that's defensive tackle Logan Hall. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers had quite a good game against the Atlanta Falcons. Ended up having 2 sacks, 2 solo tackles, 2 tackle for loss, 5 QB hits. He was really wrecking havoc against the Atlanta Falcons. In his 3rd season here, Joe, another former second-round pick, rostered in 9% of leagues. This is a deep league find here, Joe. What are your thoughts on Logan Hall? Would you spend a lot of money on him?
Yeah, it definitely is a deep league find. I'm not so sure I would spend a lot of money on him, but I do think it's an intriguing ad just because, he's had 3 sacks over the last 2 weeks here. Maybe he's starting to get things going, and the Bucs have been able to, jump out to some early leads, which helps allow that defensive line to be aggressive. But, especially that Thursday night game, you just constantly saw him in the backfield against Kirk Cousins, hitting him, getting this 2 sacks in that game as well. So I definitely think he's worth an ad. I wouldn't go crazy, but like you mentioned, this is already like if you're in a deep league as well. So probably anywhere from 0 to 3%. Just a speculative ad and maybe an interesting guy you play on the matchups.
Yeah, ultimately, I think I'd pass on this guy. I see the potential, I can see the path, but for me, Kalijah Cansey's been out, in a calf injury, in practice in week 1, hasn't played yet all year. Todd Bowles said had they had played on Sunday and not Thursday, he thought he probably would have played. So if Kalijah Cansey's back and you got Vita Vea in the middle, Logan Hall goes back to primarily the 3rd rotating guy. So not to say he can't do a decent bit with the snaps. It's just his snaps are going to be less. So as a result, Kansey isn't probably just, I wouldn't imagine he's just going to go full go. They probably are going to ease him in, especially with Tampa. They've got their sights on playoffs. So, they're going to be smart with a guy like him. So you might have a few more weeks where it's like, okay, he's still relevant, but I just don't know how relevant he'll be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's fair. I just, wonder if they just figure out ways to get him on the field anyways, just because he has impressed over the last couple of weeks. And it's not like, Joe Tryon or even, I believe, Yaya Diaby, I think, has been a little bit of a disappointment here as well entering the, in the season. So the edge rushers aren't exactly getting it done. Wonder if they try to just get him on the field anyways.
You really think he's been a disappointment? I feel like Diaby's been okay.
Well, he's been okay, man. I wanted him to do better.
Well, sure, you had him as an IDP my guy, so you were
Right.
expecting him to,
Exactly.
go
So
over
for
the
me,
moon.
I had high expectations for him.
Yeah. All right, the next guy we're going to be talking about is the guy I wanted on there.
He's
Right?
got
So
1 sack, man. That's what I'm talking about. 1 sack.
all right. So this guy I wanted to pound the table for. I added this guy, and that's linebacker Trevin Wallace, a rookie for the Carolina Panthers, former 3rd-round pick out of University of Kentucky. He played quite well against the Chicago Bears. 10 solo tackles, 5 assisted. I think for him, what gets me intrigued is at the end of the day, we saw Shaq Thompson is out for the year, but it was an ACL. And Josie Jewell's banged up too, so he's really the guy in the middle. We talked about this before, especially on defense. Injuries pave a way for someone to get that starting role and get opportunities, and ultimately it pays you dividends. So he's a guy who's just based on necessity, he's starting. So to me, I think Trevin Wallace is a continual streamer. Now you could say, and this is probably where you're going to go because you weren't as excited about this guy. Once Josie Jewell comes back, he knows his defense very well. He played under Evero. So you could say that Jewell is going to really take over the duties. But for now, I believe the green dot is on Trevin Wallace. So I'd say that question is longevity. I'd say about 0 to 3%. I wouldn't go over 5% of your FAAB.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but it's actually where I was going to really go with it. I was going to go with it just the fact that he had an absolutely, ridiculous game of 15 tackles, 10 solo. I think it's going to be, if you're looking for that every week, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's more of an anomaly. And the Bears, they got up early in that game, really ran the ball a lot, which allowed him to get even more tackles. So I would just, I do think he's probably worth an ad, like you said, just because of the opportunity with the injuries in front of him. I just don't know, what to expect production wise going forward.
So you view it more as like a game script type of deal. Why that happened for him because of the amount of times that the Bears ran the ball after getting ahead.
That's kind of what I'm looking at it from. I mean, this upcoming week they do play the Falcons. They like to they should like to run the ball, but they haven't seemed to. So I guess we'll see what happens.
All right, Joe, the last guy we're going to be talking about, a guy who I was extremely excited for coming in the draft. We talked about him in Dynasty. And then, all of a sudden, he really didn't play all that much to start the year. Kind of wonder what was going on. That's safety Tyler Nubin from the New York Giants, former second round picks we've been talking about, out of the University of Minnesota. He's now seems to be, really getting involved on the defense. Had a fumble recovery, 7 solo tackles, 2 assisted, a tackle for loss. Thing is, the guy's a ball hawk too. And yet he still has not had an interception yet, so that might be to come. So, Joe, he's rostered in 51% of leagues, so much more rostered. Obviously, in Dynasty leagues, he definitely will probably be on somebody's roster. If not, you better go scoop him up. What are you thinking for Tyler Nubin? How much FAAB are you putting down for him?
I think, right around 5 to 7% probably for Nubin. I do think he's a good ad, and that's if he's available. I mean, like you said, he's 51% rostered, so he is pretty heavily rostered compared to the other guys that we're talking about. But yeah, the last couple of weeks, he's definitely got it done at the tackle level. And you mentioned it with him, being a ball hawk in college and everything. He's very instinctive. If those pass deflections and interceptions are to come, possibly that'll just really put him over the top for you.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to talk a little bit more about deep IDP waiver, whereas even a lot of the questions we receive more as kind of your maybe more known guys, which is okay. It's just, honestly, it's just a roll of the dice because, I mean, at that point, you're going name between name, and at the end of the day, it's like IDP, a guy can go off one game, and then he could be, vanished in the next 3 or 4. Nubin, here's a guy, if he's out there, I'd be spending possibly 10 to 15%. This is a starting safety for you the rest of the way. For whatever reason, I don't know why, I'm not as close to it. They did not play Nubin right away. I believe it was Dane Belton and Pinnock to start the season. Well, now Tyler Nubin was at 56 of snaps, 97% of the snaps. He was on the field. I think he's becoming that guy now in the back end. They lost Xavier McKinney. The whole idea of bringing Nubin, I think, was to replace somewhat of a difference. I mean, they both could be ball hawks. I think Nubin might be a more willing tackler than Xavier McKinney. But I think at the end of the day, Nubin's a guy I'm excited for. I think the sky's the limit. I think he's just going to keep rising up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he was a rookie. I think they just wanted to ease him into the action. Decided to go with Belton and Pinnock, who's a more of a veteran guy. I think it's a smart move, but you do see the utilization increase over the last 2 weeks, and the production has been there. So, yeah, as long as he keeps getting those opportunities, like you said, I could expect him to keep going up. And especially this week, they got the Bengals. The Bengals like to throw it deep and take chances. Who knows? Maybe he gets a chance to get his hands on a ball this week.
And if nothing else, pass deflections, right? I mean, it doesn't
Right.
always have to be receptions depending on your scoring settings. That could also be beneficial for you as well.
But yeah, if the Giants are smart, they're going to have him over the top of Chase and not allow those deep passes to him like these other teams have been.
You would think. So that does it for our Week 6 IDP waiver wire ads. We've been doing it all throughout the season, so make sure you check out our upcoming episodes where we talk about IDP waivers going forward. You're not going to miss it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.